Hi, everybody. Emotions. To feel or not to feel? Where do we go with that? And Sean and I had a great conversation about it, and we want to share that with you. So, Sean, I hand it over to you. If you could share on your parenting journey, how emotions have played a role, and what we can share with our families here today.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, and thank everyone for joining. Yeah, emotions are incredible, especially having emotional regulation. I think is huge. But as a single father of a teenage girl, emotions can run extremely high. So, and for a while, I didn't really know how to handle those. And a lot of times, you'll be in different environments with different people, and you see how they handle it. And sometimes a lot of it is she just shut it down. Why are you crying? Why are you doing this? You're being ridiculous. And I come to find out from my daughter and I taking some dialectical behavior therapy together, really learning what validation was all about.
Hmm. You want to share more about what that means?
Yeah, without a doubt. It was really huge to know and to really understand how when she was getting to like a 10 on the scale, where before it's you kind of try to figure it out, you try to solve it, you want to fix it as a father or as a parent.
Hmm.
And by doing that, you're not listening. So you're kind of rushing in there, and she wants to be her, she or they want to be heard. And once again, I'm putting on the dad fix it hat, and I want to know what's going on, who did this, or what happened, what did they say to you, or whatever the situation might be. But then I learned I just need to let her know that I'm there. You know, I hear you, I believe you, because her emotions are her emotions. Whether I think they're ridiculous or over the top, that's her experience. And it took me a while to understand that and everyone should feel that way about everyone's emotions because that's what they are. Now, you may not like the behavior that comes along with it,
Hmm.
but validate the emotions, but you don't have to validate the behavior.
Yeah, I think I want to unpack a little bit of this validation, because I think, and what you brought in is something so important. Okay, that, and I've experienced that too, not only in my personal life, but also when I work with families, is that you want your child to be okay, and you want to do it the quickest, fastest, the best way possible. But the best way possible is what you just said, emotional regulation. And I want to take this to a step into independence. Independent behavior or maturity or being independent in the person that you are is not just putting on your shoes, packing your bag, getting cleaning your room.
Right.
um, is also your mental emotional states and how you want to manage them, just like you want to manage your things, you want to manage your thoughts and your emotions. And just like I wouldn't want someone to fix my room for me. You don't like my room, fine. But you can't fix it. It's the same with your emotions. You can't fix my emotions, and I think a lot of children feel that.
Yeah.
Uh, there is a parent piece to it, but I want to talk about the kids first. So independence, emotional regulation. So the tools that we can provide or pathway to provide in what do you want to do with it, and giving it the space, emotional space. But when you say validation, I see that as even a step further, like not further as in back, before we get to regulating it. It's like, what is it? You can't do something about anything unless you know where you're at. Where's point A? If you don't know what's point A, you can't get to point B.
Right.
Uh, it, and so I really feel this is so important. Like, the biggest part of the battle is, where's the battle?
It's
And
usually in here. That's my own battle right there. But yeah,
and I want to ask you, so one is validating her emotions, and then how is it being your emotions as the parent?
well, I think in that moment, it's not a. I look at it as it's not about me. You know, I'm just very neutral in the sense that I guess I'll deal with it once everything happens, once I find out what really is going on. But I think in the moment, it's more about allowing her to go from a 10 down to a 2 gradually, knowing that I'm there to support her and listen to her, not judge her or ridicule her, tell her to knock it off or whatever. And someone told me once in doing this, kind of validating someone else's feelings, it's just to simply say, I believe you. Because once again, it's their emotions. And you may not understand, but it's still their emotions. And by saying, I believe you, I think that kind of, drops the defenses down a little bit. You just kind of just listen and just give it a little time and just hold the space for them to be able to come down from that 10 to really look at the situation and be able to finally start talking about it.
Yeah, I think what you mentioned about listening, you put yourself out at the in that moment when you are the listener. And it doesn't, it's, I guess you're not just saying when emotions are running very high. It could even be anywhere on the scale, low to high. But when you're in the listening position, to really be the listener of the other person.
Oh, without a doubt, with general conversation, if someone's sharing something with you, I mean, you don't have to be in this high emotional state. That's still a skill to be able to listen to someone who's telling you something without jumping in, you know, waiting for that pause to hop in on the conversation, but holding the space for them to tell you how they feel, and until they're ready to give you the opportunity to talk.
Yeah, and then when you say, I believe you, at that point, it is true. It's not just words,
Right.
it's not something that's in the script.
But a lot of us can't distinguish between the emotion and the behavior because I
Mm.
think a lot of times we see the behavior, we don't like the behavior, so we're trying to shut that down. But at the same time, you're shutting that down, you're shutting down the emotion, and then they're just going to shut down. At least
Yeah, and I guess,
that's been my experience.
yeah, and I guess the behavior can come as different things. It could be angry, it could be irritation, it could be slamming doors and things.
Oh yeah.
It could sometimes be self harm or harming with angry words to the other person. Um, yeah, and I guess, and when you're listening, you don't want to spend your time formulating what's your comeback.
Yes. And we seem to always be generating in our mind, what am I going to say next? Or focusing on something they said, and we want to address that, but in the meantime, we're not listening to the continued conversation. So I totally agree with you. We focus and we want to hop in on it instead of just really taking a step back and taking everything in that they're saying to us.
Yeah, and I think one of the other impediments that comes is I know what you're speaking about. I possibly couldn't know what you're speaking about. It's not my
Right.
experience. I could have a related one, but not necessarily same. And I don't have to have the experience that you have in order for me to listen to you.
Right. Exactly. Because you're trying to get the understanding. You're trying to see where they're coming from. Now, sure, I was a teenager at one point, but I was not a teenage girl. So it's like I have no point of reference when it comes to those kind of things. But even if it was a son, it's still a different time and era, and there's just different things going on. So I think I can probably meet them a little bit, but it's more about them than it is about me is my whole point. So
in the moment. And I feel that I want to take it to one other aspect of it is that even as the listener, now I think I need to be aware of where I am in this moment in time.
mhm.
I could be having a rough day. I could be worried about something. And that's when I want you to be okay. I have assessed your situation because you told me somewhat what happened, and it's going to be okay. It's not so important because what I'm dealing with right now is more pressing. Um, but if I don't listen to myself as to what my needs are or where my emotions are at that moment in time, and if I don't self validate that, um, that's still going to make, even if I say not a word, that's still going to make the child or the other person feel not heard
Mm.
because I'm too preoccupied with my concerns.
That's an interesting point. I guess I never really looked at it from that point of view. Um, I think maybe I'm looking at it from she comes through the door after a bad day at school. She runs into her room. Like I said, she's at a level 10. At this point, it's like maybe I let her calm down a little bit. Maybe I give her a little space first. I'm not quite sure. I guess it all depends on the situation. And I guess it all depends on the severity of how upset they are or what the conversations. I'm not saying you always have to be at a level 10 to be to share feelings or listen to somebody by any means. I was just thinking about that as the true, when to validate somebody, just to let them know they are being heard when they're in a heightened state. But I do agree with you that can happen at any given point during any conversation.
Yeah, and I feel that a lot of times, and I've had this with parents somewhere, even with my own parents, there's a general notion that you can't tell your kids when things are not going right. That you are responsible for making everything go well and your child is safe and protected. And then I feel that the greatest lack of protection lies in us not acknowledging where we are as parents because things we're still people, um, even if we're not kids. And that is playing into feelings of not being heard, not being supported, not feeling supported yourself, and the anxiety and the stress it takes, the toll it takes on us. Um, I know this leads us to some other questions about how would how do you talk, how do you go about it, because it's not as simple as I had a bad day,
Mm,
but it is as simple as I had a bad day at the same time.
sure.
Um,
No, I think
so
you bring up a good point. I mean, as a parent, you don't want to dump your day on somebody else, like your kid, especially. There's certain things that you aren't going to share, and it's not being secretive. It's just the fact that you're an adult and you have to deal with things, and you don't need to lay that burden on them because they don't need to know every detail of an adult life, especially an adult parent life. You know what I mean? So I understand that. But the good thing about when my daughter and I took this training together, if you will, if she says something to me, I'll look at her and say, you know what, that wasn't very validating. So I call her out on it because she's had the training, and it's kind of it's a playful banter, but it's also getting my point across too that if I deserve the same respect that I give you.
that's a great note to think about. And could we have some ending conclusion, Sean, with just there is mutual respect here. And I know we've left a lot of questions unanswered, but these are good things to think about. Just the before and after experience of this mutual self respect and validation.
From our point of view,
Yeah,
from
from your experience,
my
so we
experience,
can, yeah, so we can bring
yeah,
this
I mean,
together.
prior to having that training, it was just, there just wasn't that connection. There wasn't that communication. We didn't really know how to communicate to each other. And I don't want to say in a loving way because we love each other very much, but in a respectful way, to the point that we didn't have the tools to know how to deal with everything. And even to the point where they suggested, and you might know about this as well, sometimes she would put ice packs in her hands, and the coolness of them, that would do something to the body, to regulate yourself. So prior to having those tools and better understanding of communication and validation, it was much harder because you're going off of what you were taught by your parents, and maybe what your spouse was or your partner. But afterwards, going through that and having that, not only did that experience bring us closer because this was like a 6 month class. We went once a week for 2 hours. So we were very ingrained in it. And, we came out of it with these tools. But even then I had to learn more about it. It's, well that you can have all the tools in the world, but if you don't use them, if you don't practice them, they're useless. So that's pretty much what I had to do with it.
It's beautiful. I think building bridges of connection and understanding can bring us closer. It's not a question of how much we love each other, but it's building these connections and strengthening them every day in the present, um, and staying away from assumptions of how it could be or should be or would be.
Right.
Wow. Okay, so I think we do have some more screens coming up here, but we will conclude for today. This has been insightful to know, and it's so heartening to know you had this transformation in your life, and that I can have that for all of you listeners and families. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you soon.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Thank you so much.